I know many of you don't know exactly what to say or where to start after seeing this incredible piece of filmmaking. I am Gail Zemaklaman. I actually just finished my third book, which is set in northeastern Syria. And it's a real privilege for me tonight to introduce you to Waad Al Kateab and Edward Watts. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. I want to start, I'm going to jump right in because I know this is such an immersive piece of filmmaking. I want to start there, which is that unlike so many stories where you feel you're at a remove, what you have done is look from the inside out at the world. You are very much a part of this story. And I wonder for you, as somebody who wanted to be a storyteller and then went into marketing because your mother said, no, you cannot be a journalist in this Syrian regime, how do you think about the way you set up the story of being right in the heart of it and then letting the world see the
So, like, unfortunately, in so many places, we wanted people to know what's happening, not what they want to see inside Syria. We've been, like, full of, this ready, like, statements or things, which always, like, people start to speak about what's happening in Syria as, like, they know or they understand or they feel, and not always it's been, like, the right thing. So I felt in what should this film do is something like totally different from everything happened before. And just like because of all that material that I've taken through this 5 years, I felt, like it could speak out by itself. I can support whatever like the film needs, but also the heart of the film should be like the people who like lived it and felt so many things, sometimes bad, sometimes even like not nice to make people feel. And there's so many like lines from the voiceover when we wrote. I was just like, I don't want to hear that anymore in my life, but I should put it out in this way because this is the true experience.
I was saying that I thought it was almost going to be difficult for me to do this, and I always have such a remove, but having just come back, one of the people who I spent the last 2 years chronicling was the first mother to give birth in Aisa camp for the displaced coming out of Raqqa in 2017. And I wonder what the role of being an expectant mother, because you didn't start the film, you didn't start shooting as an expectant mother, right? But how did that change the way you saw and the way you chronicled this story?
So we had that conversation once. I never thought about it after I finished the film, not even when we were working on the film probably. But after we finished the whole thing, I was like, I looked back and said like, I've never put the camera in, like to myself, or I never wanted to speak to the camera in very like neat way before I had them and before I being pregnant. Everything before was just like trying to document what's happening outside. There's something where so many videos like I'm chanting with the people in the protest.
This is when it was a revolution that was young people who had come out into the streets,
exactly.
Right? The whole journey for the revolution.
Exactly. But then I felt when I started like feeling that I'm a mom or I will be a mom. When I started feeling that no, should be also a little bit about my experience, and not just my experience as well, but also as any young mom in that situation where there's so many things we think about as any young mom all over the world. All that like small fears or details about how I want her to be like when she grow up, or like the small things about the first baby when it will come, and you want like this kind of stuff for her. So all these like details, I start like to think about it and take that, capture that moment, and then being in front of the camera in so many places where I can't speak to anyone else. Like one of the scenes, even before Sama was born, but the camera was the only place where I can speak out on my, like fears, literally. And then when like the situation started to become like more complicated, it was for me the only way to be survived. Because if I didn't make it out, this footage would be out. You will see that even if I wasn't here, and you will like see what the situation was in that place.
It is that bearing witness. I mean, I think in storytelling, there is no other, right? It's just us. And you're having this deeply intimate conversation in a medium that is meant to reach the entire world. And did you ever feel that there was a distance between you and the people you were shooting? Because I read one day we were talking about the little boy, the baby, or I think or the baby who they saved, that you didn't believe he was actually alive through the lens. You had to actually look. Can you tell us that?
Yeah, like this is one of the interesting things because when I was filming this boy, I was like so emotional about that. I gave birth to someone in the same room exactly, and it was like just 3 months ago before this thing happened. So as I was like filming him, I was like, so many times I wanted just to turn the camera off and run out. And then every time I feel like, I don't know why, there's something was telling me like maybe one more minute. And when he opened his eyes, you know, like I was behind the camera and I literally looked at that, like, is that real? Like, I thought I start to be like literally crazy. And then, you know, like everything happened later as you've seen in the camera. But I've never felt this camera make like a wall or something or protect me in that situation because I know that behind this camera there's my daughter, there's my husband, there's my whole life. I was not even not sure that I will be make it out. I was like pretty sure that we will not make it out. So you know, like you can't just feel that I'm coming here to film these people and then I'm going out and I will try to be out. I was like, I'm stuck with these people to the end, so I don't know what happened. In every scene and everything, I was like, you know, maybe this is the last one I could capture. So I need to be like strong enough to take this now because now I can't. I don't know after 5 minutes what will happen.
And I think that is what makes it feel so urgent because so many times, first like me, you have the privilege of a passport that takes you to safety, right? So you always have this push me, pull you. Do I stay longer? Do I not stay longer? My family's back in California. Do I stay? They want me to leave. You know, whereas what this allows you as a storyteller is to never leave, right? And I wonder how you kept yourself shooting during moments when you wanted in your mind to say, you know what, even my husband's going to be like, okay, you know, at this point you should stop the camera and go get safety.
Like, I really don't know. I will turn this question for you because when you are there, really, what do you feel? What do you think? Do you have all these questions? Do you have all these answers? When you are in that things exactly, you know, you can't think about that. Please tell me.
You think about the responsibility you have. I mean, I wouldn't compare what we see as outsiders to living in a community that's facing it every single night and day. But I think what I think is I wouldn't be here if it weren't needed. If I didn't have the privilege
all this
of bearing
question like
witness.
started to become when you are out, right? Not when you are
in the middle of it, you're just like, get out of my way. I'm trying to get what I need to get done to tell this story. Yes.
Exactly. So I mean, like, yeah, I think this is like everyone who lived in that situation will not think a lot about what's happening, like, you know, or all that things. But when you have a moment, which we don't have a moment there, so you know, all these questions start to become like clear. And there's so many questions through this process, and you can say that I have no answer for him, like in the last maybe 2 months because I don't know.
And actually, I wanted to come to you because you had the ridiculously difficult challenge of sifting through so much that could have been on our screen. I know that probably everybody had their favorite scene that didn't get included, and then you get 12 people say, why wasn't this in or why wasn't that in? How did you build the narrative, given how much, and then I want to come back to the risk you took in taking that footage out, but given how much you had, how did you think about approaching cutting and about building the narrative around someone?
The short answer is it took 2 years. that's
short.
An expression of the complexity. But I think the key thing was my voice is so loud, isn't it? Weirdly loud. the key thing was the priority was showing respect to what Waad had achieved and what she'd done and what they'd lived through. And so I was kind of trying to put myself in the shoes of you guys and think, how could people coming off the streets of LA or London connect with this story, even though they have nothing, thankfully, in their lives that necessarily relates to it. And really what it was about was the two of us having that conversation, building the trust between us, so that Waad was in a position to say this was what mattered to us on the inside, and I was in a position to say, well, this is, I think, what would help outsiders to see that story. And essentially for 2 years wrestling between us, saying, right, now we can both agree that this bit is vital, it matches both, or this is important to one perspective or the other, and bringing that blend together so that it would work for all audiences, so that it would be true to the people who lived it, but also can, be able to connect with audiences outside too.
And there are so many reasons to absolutely love this film for all its difficulty and the wrenching moments, is that I think it captures what those moments are, which is the worst of humanity right next to the best of humanity. And it's so complex to capture those two, to really show that they live right next to each other, because we've reached this moment. Well, I'm going to pause there and just say if you agree with that, and then how you feel in those moments. Do people ever say, don't capture me when I'm laughing? It's a very serious time.
So yeah, I don't know, but through living that experience, you can see that very clearly in your life, in everyone's life around you. And also, you don't think about next a lot. So the immediate thing gives you a lot of chance to live just now and give this moment everything you can to give. For that thing, so many things to, even if you are not able to react with these things in very brave way, or in very maybe open way, you will need to do this because you feel this is the last minute could be. And people like Sam Afra and their kids, the staff of the hospital, the doctors, nurses, so many people sometimes you've never met, or you'll never meet them again. But just that connection between the people, that we are all stuck in this together. We don't know, if we will get out or not. We don't know if what next. You don't know if I can really do something for them, or they could do something to me. But for this second of that meeting, you can give them your life. You asked also about the the children themselves, when you see how they got a chance now to be alive, the people, the kids, when they were for example, betting the bus, and the persimmon scene, this baby who was born just suddenly after the very useless and hopeless attempt to make him alive. You feel you give the life something, but then it takes a lot of things, and you don't feel any justice. But then once he this baby, you feel this is kind of justice, and this is why we should continue and keep going to the end to this life, even if we know that we will lose everything in the end. But there's this sweet moments when you can just rely on to keep going.
It's interesting because it's a war film, but it's really about love. And
about life more than war, yeah.
And I wonder, if you could talk a little bit about making a war film that is both love affirming and life affirming, because it's a love letter. It's a love letter between you and your wonderful husband. It's a love letter between you and your child. It's a love letter to you and your city. And it's a love letter between you and your camera, right? You and your camera have this relationship where you're talking to each other probably more than you talk to your husband those days, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've been to these situations. I've made documentaries in conflict zones and humanitarian disasters for over 10 years, and I think what you always see in those places is the best of people. You see people have an incredible sense of humour, in extraordinary circumstances, as you see in the film, because that is what human beings are about. In the worst of times, the best of them comes through. But I think what's so special about what Waad achieved, in all the filmmaking I'd done in those places, I'd never captured that truth. I'd never got it on film, and she had. And I saw that from the first hour that we sat together, that she had captured this incredible full spectrum of human experience, and the fact that even in conflict zones, people are worrying about what are they going to eat, what bedtime story are they going to tell their kids. And I think that is the power of this, I think, because it shows a human truth that we haven't seen out of these kind of conflict zones before.
I'm going to ask a slightly controversial question, which is, do you think it helped you being pregnant to relate to some of the people who are in your film?
Yeah, like, of course, yes. You know, like being pregnant, it was like quite experience. Not just in that place, you know, in every place all over the world. But there, it was totally different experience. And I was like just thinking about. Sometimes I was really forget everything was happening and just feeling the moment that I'm pregnant and I'm happy. It's led me not just to the people who are in the film, but even understand the whole life in different ways. And I'm still like feeling that now because I'm a mom. I don't know, like it's hard, but also at the same time it's so important.
I remember being almost 7 months pregnant reporting from Afghanistan, and I remember thinking, this was the best reporting trip because nobody would say no to you, right? Everyone was like, yeah, okay, right? I mean, there was something about the universality of that experience that when you're a filmmaker trying to break the wall between you and the people you're filming, I'm sure helped you, too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what like people were saying that because you are a woman, so many people say no to you. I was like, yeah, so many people said no. But also so many people said yes, just because you are a woman or because you are pregnant. And I don't think like so many women, I have access to them without even like serious conversation about what I'm doing, just because they've seen me like pregnant or they've seen like Sama 3 months old or like 6 months old, and they've seen like, yeah, I want to speak with this woman. I want to tell her a lot of things because without explaining, she will understand because she went through the same experience.
Critics have called this a seminal piece of filmmaking. They've talked about this, and I wonder for you, who is Everton, who made films before, but I would argue probably none could have come close to the intimacy of this. And I wonder, talk a little bit about this experience of creating a film that is really this deeply personal.
It was such a great honour, really, and a privilege to, because, I mean, as you know, when you come in as an outsider, you know, to make a film, even your heart is in the right place and you want to tell a story about people, you know, to get their story out there in the world and get people to connect with it and maybe motivate people to help. But you just don't, you can't possibly access the level of humanity or the depth that obviously people who've lived through it have. And so this is the best thing I've ever done by such a long way, because I had the opportunity to collaborate, you know, with the person whose story it was, and really just to try and do everything that I could to support her, to tell her story in the best way possible that would connect with everybody. And so that made it, very unusual, but also unusually great.
We have a hard out because you are going to Washington, D.C. to meet policymakers, which is amazing. And I'm going to ask you one last question, which is just, a lot of people have written something, which I've heard a lot too, which is, it's so unusual to see a war story that doesn't have shooting, right? That is not about people who are aiming at other people, or people who are receiving incoming fire from other people. But it never struck me at all when you're in those situations as at all unusual, because of course there were amazing stories to be told, and I wondered, did you ever think, oh, this is going to look different than perhaps other war stories, even about Syria, even about Aleppo? Or did you just think, this is the one I have to tell?
So I've never thought about that because through the 5 years of filming everything, there was no plan to make a film, and I was just like trying to capture everything happening, but not thinking about, you know, someone else will do that, not me, of course, you know. But then when I was like alive and I was displaced, and now I have this responsibility now to do this. At that time, everything I was thinking about, how important is it for the story to be out. And unfortunately, through these 2 years of that process, we've seen 2 other cities were displaced, and the siege was at the end of them. And so many, you know, like things, you look at your story, and you look at the news, and you see the same thing exactly happening, and you know some people in that cities. And you know, like 1 year ago, since we started releasing the film, just like yesterday, there was a picture coming out from Idlib. Idlib is the area like up north to the west, and there's like thousands of cars, and people are just like trying to free an area never, like thought about how this difference between this and others. But then when the film was out and people were really engaged with this in a different way of even other films, and they were coming to me and say like, we watched all the Syrian films before, but this is like different. I start feeling like, yeah, this could be really different. But I hope also people will look at this and not just like think about this is something happened 3 years ago. This is still happening until today. There's like, I don't know how many moms in the cars and just like trying to escape for nowhere, unfortunately.
Can I just add as well, because we tried to, because there's been such an extraordinary reaction to the film, we set up an advocacy campaign. It's called Action for Sama. So anyone here who was moved or wants to find out more, is perhaps interested in doing something to help people who are suffering today, tonight, like in Syria. Over the weekend, on Saturday night, a hospital was targeted. You know, we're wearing these badges that say "Stop bombing hospitals," which seems absurd in a world that we have to argue for people to not bomb hospitals, but it's happening now, today. So actionforsama.com is the website, and Action for Sama is all the social handles. Like, please go there, find out what you can do to help. Even a simple statement of solidarity with people in Syria, even like a tweet, you know, saying to people in Syria, we know what's going on, we're sorry that this is happening, and we're going to do our bit to try and make the world's governments do something to help you. That means a lot.
And Idlib right now is home to people who have no place to go because the border is closed, and so many of those folks are people who've been displaced 2 and 3 and 4 other times from other towns and places. With that, I want to just say, it sounds unusual to say, but it is one of the most beautifully poignant films about something so horrible, and it really does make it all very deeply personal. And so I just want to thank you for spending time with us, to wish you all the best as you go forward and bear witness, and to engage each one of you to know that every single person has the power to make a difference, but to exercise it, you have to recognize it. And I just encourage you to go to
Action for Sama.
Action for Sama, and very best for them.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
Thank you, everyone.